Hello and welcome back to Red 5 Scale Models. This time out we're going to be doing the Airfix 1/72 Wellington Mk1. It was a build on behalf of someone else. It was actually the bomber his great uncle flew in during the Second World War, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Got to test out some new techniques and buy a whole load of kit that I wasn't expecting. Right, we're back. I'll take you through basically a little bit of a kit review. I've taken the bags and things off. I've bought some custom masks because there's a lot of glass because he wants it with the side panel open. You can't really see, but basically side panel open. Wellington's had a big long panel with glass on. There's glass underneath in the Bombays. There's glass everywhere. So I bought the Edward mask set. I'm waiting for that to arrive, along with some custom decal sheets because his plane was PMA and this doesn't come with it, comes with RAA or just an R. So rather than kind of paint them on and make complete arse of the colour, I just bought masks. I'm going to use the roundels and things out the kit, and I think the paint scheme might change a little bit. I've found WPM in the same unit, which is like this, but I don't know whether I'm going to do it like that, or assuming that that was the same unit from that photograph, or same squadron, or whether I'm going to just stick to kind of the box artwork and go down that route, because that tends to be majority of Wellingtons that I've seen are like that, and I also like the wavy pattern down the side. So a quick kit review. Like I say, I've opened it, had a look. It's an Airfix, so there's a weird smell that comes from an Airfix kit, and I don't quite know why.
And what the hell is that smell?
I don't know what the hell it is, but it's bloody awful. So basically like that, with the windows down the side, standard green and brown RAF camo, black underneath, so I'll get some white washes into there for the panel lines. Instructions look all pretty straightforward. If there's a funny noise in the background, the dog's fast asleep behind me, snoring. Interior detail looks good enough. A lot of the time with these things, I've got a 1/48 HK Lank and a Tamiya Lank, which I'll go a little bit more in deep detail with the interior, because obviously you see a lot more. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Airfix have got some really solid kits coming out. Bombays down, wheels down, weathered, so I'll probably do like more of a matte finish to it because it was covered in canvas, like a Hurricane. Nice detail. It's got that unique ribbed structure inside, and the panel, the canvas type effect, the ribbing looks really nice. Have to try and do some pre-shading, post-shading on those. These are interesting, the wings. I don't know if you can see it on this video, but it's got the crisscross of this pattern going through the wings. So again, try and get some highlights on them, maybe post shade some darker shades in the middle of each of the diamonds, just to make it pop out a little bit. Engine cowlings, things like that, all the same. Exhausts. So you've got 6 sprues and then a clear sprue. There's your Bombay doors, which most likely need cutting to have them open. But no, it's a really nice level of detail on the kit, and I'm looking forward to getting going. A lot of the gun turrets, your bombs a little bit lacking, but they are what they are. And no, yeah, look forward to going through it with you all. So I'm not overly happy with how this has worked out, mainly because what you can see basically right into where I've dry brushed it, all the silver's come off onto the backing, and it just makes it look a bit meh. So I'm going to try and get that looking a bit more canvassy and a little bit more, have something a bit more to it. So what I'm going to do is take this Seraphim Sepia from Citadel, and I'm basically going to wash the whole thing in that, and then I'm going to go back with a different type of technique to try and bring that silver out of the paneling again, the aluminium framework. So this Seraphim Sepia, I'll give it a bit more of a canvassy, worn, yellowy tint to it. So it should, and what it should also do is get in all the nooks and crannies and hide a lot of where the silver's been dry brushed in there. So what I don't want to do is just keep painting over the top of it, with that mahogany. So I'm going to just dry brush this all over, let it dry for a good hour or two, and then I'll come back to it and do the next step. Okay, so this is it, kind of, with the Seraphim Sepia on it. It looks a real mess. What you've got to remember all the time is you're not going to see a great deal of this interior with it being 1/72. It is just to give the idea that there is something there. But what I really want to try and do is get this crosshatch back and tidy it up a wee bit. So I'm taking the same aluminium as I did before. You can use any kind of aluminium paint. It's just I like this Mr. Hobby. And before, what happened is I dry brushed it. No matter how much paint I got off the brush, it was still getting in all the nooks and crannies. So what I'm going to try and do this time, paint some on my finger. Don't know why I said it like that. Paint some on my finger. Dab it off a little bit, and then gently just rub across the top of the surfaces. This should stop you from going right into all those nooks and crannies as much, and bring out just the raised surfaces, because obviously you've got that, your finger's a lot less brushy. And it'll also get rid of all that sickly yellow colour that the Seraphim Sepia's kind of caused. Bring out all this lovely raised detail. Because if you wanted to try and do it with a full interior, you'd probably be best off going in and brush painting every single crosshatch, or doing it a lot neater than this. But this is just so if you do want to look inside, you can, and you get an idea that there is this amazing crosshatch of aluminium in there. And to be honest, I think that looks a lot better. A lot better. So I'm quite happy with that, how that's worked out. So I'll do the other side, and then basically we'll be ready to rock and roll, starting to stick stuff in terms of like the air bottles, the instrument panels, things like that, and get cracking with the rest of the build. Right, okay, so I've got the two sides glued together. They went together surprisingly well. A little bit of persuasion here and there. And then what we're going to do is just fill in these seam lines. So I've masked off the hull because it's got this ribbed pattern on. What I don't want to do is kind of sand that off. And first of all, what I'm going to use is this Revel Plasto filler. You need Tamiya stuff, Tamiya putty or the Vallejo stuff if you want. I just happen to have this. Stick a bit onto a piece of paper and then let's use a cocktail stick. It dries quite quick, this stuff. I can't speak for Tamiya putty and things. Run it just along the seam line like that. Neatly as you can. Trying to avoid any, you can rescribe things like panel lines and stuff, but try not to go too much into those, like where there's antenna going and things like that. You'll notice with this Plasto stuff it'll start drying quite quickly, but to get fully dry it takes a little while. So you can't sand this for a good couple of hours. But just put a thin coat on and then we'll sand it down, go through all the grades of the sandpaper. And then maybe as a second wave, let's say add some Mr. Surfacer 15 or 500, is it, or 15? Yeah, 500, just as an extra fine filler, and then rinse and repeat. Right, so what you do now that this is dry is basically you've just got to sand it back down and smooth that quite neatly, quite as gentle as you can, as gently as you can, so as not to take any of the extra raised detail off. Bit easier with this Wellington because there's no major panel lines on it, but the process is the same throughout the whole thing. Got quite a harsh sand and stick. This is just a general purpose sandpaper stick. You can also use things like I use these nail files, stuff like that. And then I've got a series of different grit wet and dry sandpapers, starting at 1500, 2000, 2500, 3000. Let's get this right: 7000, 5000, 3000, 2500 and 1500, and basically smooth it down with your sand and stick first of all. Perhaps wear a respirator when you do this because obviously the dust's quite fine. Gentle as you can and as accurate as you can just on your seam line, and then take your 1500. Repeat the process. Then your 2500. Try not to grip the model too hard, just kind of let the sandpaper do the work. Don't need to go on it. Gently rub it down and then just work your way through those sandpaper grades. You'll see there that's actually not got, that's I've got the thing. I was starting to panic that I'd already sanded the thing off. Basically work your way through the grades of sandpaper, getting finer and finer, and then you'll get a nice smooth surface. And by the time you get your 7000, you should almost just be polishing the surface. You can go to 15,000 if you want. I tend not to bother. There's some people out there that want that mirror finish. I find that once your primer's on there, on that surface, it's more than ample. More than ample, because bear in mind you're going to be putting probably about 2 or 3 coats of paint, varnishes, all sorts on. Whatever hairline's there, you'll most likely fill. Find that you don't, once you primed it, you can run a bead of, paint a bead of that. It's the Surfacer 500. That's just like a thicker primer, and that ends up as like a filler, so you can run a fine bead down there. But I'll see how I get on with the primer once I've sanded the rest of this. But I'll not bore you with watching me sand it. It's just a case of starting with a heavy grit, not much pressure, just lightly do it. Let the sandpaper do the work. and then work your way through until you get your finest grade. Okay, so I'm gonna probably end this part of the video, or this part of the build, this video, and do it in multiple parts, because the eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed when I buttoned it up, I completely forgot to add in the main wing spar, which would have probably really, well, it would have just made the wings really weak if I'd have just tried to super glue them. So I had to basically prize all my hard-won gains of sealing and sanding and sealing and sanding and filling. I had to prize it apart and put the wing spar in there, and then basically redo the whole thing in terms of the filling. It's done a decent job. Plenty of filler in there. It's lovely and smooth, so it should have a nice surface to get some primer onto. But I think the next sections are going to be kind of the wings and that. It should be plain sailing from here, but there'll be a lot of masking and stuff like that. So I think it's probably best to leave this video here, and then next time out we'll carry on and catch up with the rest of the build, and then hopefully be getting onto painting, which, let's face it, for me is the most fun part. I can't speak for anyone else, but I'm not a fan of building if I can help it. So the dog's decided that he wants to jump off the chair. Yeah, so thanks for listening. Hope any of this has helped at least one person out there.